Penguin Random House Audio presents What's Next? A Backstage Pass to the West Wing, its cast and crew, and its enduring legacy of service. Forward by Aaron Sorkin. Introduction by Allison Janney. By Melissa Fitzgerald and Mary McCormack. This is Melissa Fitzgerald. Note to listeners, this program has been adapted for the audio format, and the content deviates slightly from the printed version. The audiobook includes a downloadable PDF that contains a list of organizations important to the cast and crew, and behind-the-scenes photos and images from the West Wing. From Melissa, to my parents Carol and Jim Fitzgerald, you model what it is to live a life of meaning and service. This and everything is for you.
From Mary, to my mother Nora McCormack, who approached the world with joy, empathy, and an unshakable sense of justice. I miss you. I think you would get a kick out of this book. And to my father Bill McCormack, you led by example in service as in everything. Your final words will stay with me forever. The message is to give, as much as you can, everywhere you can, for as long as you can. Keep your hand out. Keep giving.
From Melissa and Mary, to our perennial #1, Martin Sheen, whose dedication to and joy in service inspires and motivates us every day. We love you.
And to Aaron Sorkin, who sat alone in a room staring at a blank page and conjured up the world of the West Wing. You created a family. We are deeply grateful.
Forward by Aaron Sorkin. My agent had asked me if I'd like to have lunch with John Wells. I'd never met John, but I knew him by reputation as the producer of high-end dramatic television such as ER and China Beach. I wasn't sure why I was being asked to meet with him. I had a pretty good career going writing movies, and I knew nothing about television. I liked television as much as anyone else. I just didn't know anything about it. He just wants to say hello, my agent told me. I could do that. A lunch was scheduled for the following week. As it happened, the night before the lunch, I had some friends over for dinner. One of the friends was Akiva Goldsman, who'd not yet won his Academy Award for writing A Beautiful Mind. I mentioned the lunch I'd be having the next day, and he said he thought I'd like television. This is just a lunch to say hello. I'm not writing a television series. Later that night, Akiva and I went off to sneak a cigarette in the small office I kept at home. He pointed at the wall to a poster for The American President, a romantic comedy I'd written a few years earlier. You know what would make a good series? That. If you made it about senior staffers at the White House. This is just a lunch to say hello, I said. I'm not writing a television series. The next day, lunch. I walked into the restaurant and immediately saw that this was not just a lunch to say hello. John Wells was seated at a table with several executives from Warner Brothers Television. So, what do you want to do? John said. At that moment, I could have said, I'm sorry, there's been a mistake. I don't have anything to pitch. Instead, I said, I want to do a show about senior staffers at the White House. John reached his hand across the table and said, We've got a deal. I was terrified. I had to write a 1-hour pilot. It never occurred to me that the pilot might get picked up to series, and I'd also have to write episode 2, episode 3, and so on, until we were inevitably canceled after 13 episodes. After all, there was no way a network was going to put this on the air. Shows about politics didn't work. Moreover, in popular culture, our leaders are portrayed as either Machiavellian or complete dolts. But in this show, due to the romantic and idealistic style of my writing, our leaders would be as hyper-competent and dedicated as the doctors and nurses on hospital shows, the cops on police shows, and the lawyers on legal dramas. Would the audience really stand for that? They did. NBC ordered 13 episodes, then ordered the back 9, then a second season, and in the blink of an eye, a 7th. I wrote the first 88 episodes of the series before stepping down at the end of season 4. And for that time, I had the best job in show business. I'm grateful to Mary and Melissa for keeping all these memories alive and sharing them with fans of the show. Welcome to Warner Brothers Stage 23 and the set of The West Wing.
Hi, this is Allison Janney. Apparently, all this began at my house, or at least my friend Alana's house, because that's where my birthday party was in 2019, when Melissa Fitzgerald and Mary McCormack went to the table to get a piece of cake at the same time, and 10 minutes later came back with not only cake, vanilla, chocolate frosting, but also an absolutely ludicrous plan to write this book. Ludicrous because it just seems so big. I think back on those West Wing years, and it's almost an overwhelming confusion of memories, friendships, late nights, walk and talks, volunteering and advocating together, sharing so much with so many people. It was years, but it was over in an instant. How would they go about capturing all that? Where would they even begin, and where would they find the time? It was a fun conversation to have over a piece of cake at a birthday party, and they would both leave the party, resume their lives, and forget it ever happened. Except the one thing you don't do with Melissa Fitzgerald and Mary McCormack, you don't underestimate them. When they decide to do something, they get it done. Both Mary and Melissa are activists who care passionately about their causes. Melissa cares so much that she left Hollywood and moved to Washington, D.C. to dedicate herself to advocacy full-time. When they first mentioned to me that they wanted to write an insider's book about the West Wing through the lens of service, it all started to come into focus for me. After all, the show itself was just that. Stories of people in the East Wing of the West Wing, each of whom is there because of their lifelong devotion to serving their country. Aaron's scripts always seemed full of that reverence for service, whether it was actively part of the dialogue or, more often, a feeling that was there under every scene. But what they've done with the book that follows is something I couldn't have imagined they would be able to do so well. They've captured the feeling of what it was like to be part of this show. It's a stroll back through Soundstage 23 on the Warner Brothers lot. It's full of stories from on-set and off, full of insights and anecdotes, and it's full of all the voices you know and many you have not met yet. Somehow they brought those years back to life, and that is a profound gift to all of us who were part of it, and I hope for all of you who watched it. They call it a backstage pass, and I can tell you that's exactly what it is. So thank you, Mary and Melissa, for honoring this show we all love and for setting down on paper so many memories from so many people. I thought I was big enough to resist the obvious joke, but damn it, I'm not. This idea you had together at my birthday party years ago was certainly no piece of cake, and you almost bit off more than you could chew. But you did it. This introduction is really nothing more than icing on, you know what, I'll stop.
A note from the authors. This book is about the West Wing and the army of dedicated people who created it, starred in it, watched it, and kept it moving forward for 7 seasons. It's also about what the world of the show and the characters who inhabited it represented. A dedication to service. It was assembled from a number of sources, chief among which are more than 100 interviews we conducted from 2021 to 2024 with members of the cast and crew, including actors, writers, directors and producers, designers, technicians, executives, and casting directors, and even a handful of devoted, and in some cases prominent, fans, aka wingnuts.
Supplementing these primary source Q&As, we were fortunate to have available to us the extensive archival material that living in the 21st century allows. These sources range from published articles, broadcast interviews, and DVD commentaries to websites, blogs, and podcasts. The abundance of this content has been particularly meaningful to us as it pertains to those now unavailable to share their stories, including and especially our dear friends, gone but never forgotten, John Spencer and Catherine Justin. Finally, we are singularly indebted to the West Wing Weekly and its hosts Josh Molina and Rishikesh Hirway. Without this brilliant, insightful, enlightening podcast, we could not have painted as full a picture of the show as we hope to have done in the following pages. We are deeply grateful to all of you.
Prologue.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?